Hi everyone, welcome to another Instagram live conversation with Springtide Research Institute. I'm Marta Abawaji and I'm the head of community engagement at Springtide, and we have another fresh conversation for you today. I'm really excited for you to hear from our guest. We have one of the rabbis, the rabbinic program director at Judaism Your Way, joining, and she is lovely. You're really in for a treat because the work that they're doing as an organization is really innovative for how they're thinking about different rituals and traditions from the Jewish history and reinventing them, reimagining them, while also really looking at how young people can be centered in all of the different holidays and different coming of age ceremonies that they're facilitating. So we want to dig into this with you today, no matter what sort of background you're coming from, if it is within a particular spiritual tradition, or if it's just accompanying young people through some sort of after school program. I think there's takeaways in this conversation for you. So let's bring in our friend and guest today. I'm really excited to look at this conversation. I see the request. We're coming to you from multiple locations, multiple time zones. So wherever you've joined us today, we're really honored that you're taking out some moments from your maybe your lunch break to join us. Hello and welcome.
You do it.
I'm doing great. I was just giving a very small precursor, but I would love for you, in your own words, just to introduce yourself, Rabbi Karen, and what has really led you to the work you do. I think you've had an interesting trajectory that coincides with a lot of what we do at Springtide, because we're a sociological research institute. We use the social sciences to do applied research. So yeah, who you are and a bit of your background.
Sure. I'm Rabbi and I'm program director and director in Your Way. Super excited to be here. I came to become a rabbi via the sociology. I studied sociology of religion and sexuality, gender, did research with nonprofits, and then felt pulled toward cabinet to have deep and meaningful conversations with a range of people across the lifespan, and also to just accompany people on their spiritual.
I love it. I love it. Yes, I think the internet sometimes glitches a little bit, but yes, you have this background in sociology as well as gender studies before you pursued this rabbinic journey. So you're here representing Judaism Your Way. Many folks maybe are hearing about your organization for the first time. So how would you describe what you all do, what sets you apart, maybe for people who are encountering you in new ways?
Sure. Judaism Your Way is an open tent for anybody who's seeking Jewish connection. We believe that engaging with people to create sacred, beautiful experiences is a deep part of our mission. We do this by welcoming people of all ages and stages to participate in ritual, fun programs, high holidays in the Botanic Garden, so many different things. And we also accompany people on their life cycle ritual from birth to the end of life.
Awesome. Yeah, and we want to dig into some of those life cycle moments today with, particular attention to where those are reimagined with youth and young adults. I love that you're doing the high holidays in the Denver Botanic Gardens. I'm from Colorado originally, and high holidays, usually you're going to a synagogue, right? Like, it's not necessarily an outdoor event. So even just the spaces that you're utilizing are really significant, and that's part of why we want to talk to you today, because Springtide, we produce this annual report that comes out every fall called The State of Religion and Young People. And for the 2023 report, we're looking at sacred experiences, sacred encounters, sacred moments. And we're looking at what are the spaces and places that young people, ages 13 to 25, are encountering the sacred, and what sort of shape are those experiences taking. And so often the natural world, which probably comes as no surprise to you, is really highlighted. So even the fact that you're utilizing different spaces and environments to create these traditions and rituals in fresh ways, I think resonates a lot with Gen Z. It resonates with me as a millennial, but I know from our research that young people so often cite the environment as the place where they're encountering a sacred moment. But yeah, why we also want to talk to you today is just because you're doing things that are fresh, that I think people from any sort of spiritual tradition can be inspired. And these are the type of conversations that we really want to be hosting and convening, because we think across different religious experiences and traditions, there's a lot we can learn. Even people from no particular faith background, I think there'll be things that people will find really encouraging from the work you're doing. So I mentioned we have this report coming out, and you also mentioned that life cycles are part of the key elements of what you convene. So that's what I really want to dig into in a bit. But let me lay a little bit more context for what this report's going to look at. When we define sacred, many people are going to have different ideas of what that means. Sometimes it could be positive. Sometimes it might come with some baggage from different faith systems. The way we've defined sacred, I want to make sure I get the full definition, is experiences of deep wonder, awe, gratitude, deep truth, and or interconnectedness.
Yep.
We saw examples of those over and over again in the qualitative interviews we've conducted, as well as the nationally representative surveys we've done with 13 to 25-year-olds. So everyone kind of hold that definition of sacred in the back of your mind, because we're going to keep alluding to it in this conversation. But since you've done so much to innovate, and in your own words, to flip the script, I've heard you use that term, what are the sources of inspiration or information that have kind of, set the stage for you to do this type of work in new ways?
Such a question. I think Jewish tradition, so many awesome tools in our toolkit around cultivating curiosity and wonder and awe and belonging. And so we do that at Judaism by inviting people to ask questions.
Yeah.
Our way to express their curiosity. We do a lot of Jewish that is participant focused, about meaning making and meaning construction in relationship with other people. We do a lot of stuff outside. So by holidays, we always say, if you need to stretch and take a break, because services are long, go ahead and be refreshed and with a sense of awe and wonder with the natural world, and then come back. And that's a really great connect to something greater than ourselves, and feel like we belong in this universe, that we're a source of richness and worthiness, that larger system. With teens specifically, we have a 2-year Be Mitzvah process, the coming of age ceremony, that is the outcome of a lot asking questions, learning, and exploring with curiosity, and moving from becoming a learner to be closer to your community. And that is a process. More about it, but I'll stop because I know you want to get to other things.
No, that's good. That sets the stage really well. But I mean, all the language you're using in terms of curiosity and making space for questions. Um, that's so much of what our previous annual reports have focused on, is how can faith leaders and how can trusted adults accompany young people through stages of uncertainty, through asking questions with a lot of openness and curiosity. So thank you for the work you do. Okay, so I love already what you're kind of alluding to. So let's dig into that more. Since I've said already that Springtide's research focuses on 13 to 25-year-olds,
Yeah.
That's rare actually. As you probably know in your background in research, it's hard to survey down to age 13. But we've really made that critical to our mission, to hearing youth and young adults in that whole breadth of space that we define as young people. We would like to focus on that 13-year-old threshold right now with your Be Mitzvah program. So even as I say that term, you heard Rabbi Karen say it already. A Be Mitzvah program, it might sound a little bit different to you if you've maybe heard of bar or bat mitzvahs. What makes your Be Mitzvah program unique? What is the whole scope of education and mentorship and leading up to the eventual ceremony? What does that look like? What makes Judaism Your Ways process different from maybe other bar and bat mitzvahs?
Yeah, so the word bar and bat are Hebrew, Aramaic, or and the mitzvah or mitzvah means, a traditional translation of that would be commitment or obligation. And we translate mitzvah as like the act that show that you care about something special. So we changed from bar or bat to be for two reasons. One is we wanted to focus on the being and the doing Jewish. And being Jewish is just like how you're showing up in the world, and the doing Jewish, like the actions that show that you care, and that focuses on your how you respond to the relationships, so how you connect to other people. We also really wanted to be gender inclusive, and being, everybody gets to be, and it has nothing to do. So for our non-binary gender kids who are in our program, through the title of our program, we see you, we welcome you, we affirm you here. The other question that you asked is, how is this different? I think it's because we really focus on curiosity and exploration. In our first year of our program, students are typically in 6th and 7th grade. It's a experiential curriculum. It's fun. We cook Jewish around the holidays. We make art. We get for so many different metaphors and frameworks around the idea of something larger than ourselves. Some people call it God, some people don't. And Judaism is a very pluralistic of different ideas and metaphors to express a sense of sacred connection. In the second year, it's more upping your goal game of a ceremony that you have designed and prepared for that reflects and your interests. And so some kids choose to do an out of the box, super duper creative ceremony. Each month they take on a challenge that like pushes them to grow. And some kids do a art explores different dimensions of who they're becoming in the world. Some kids choose to have a relationship with Torah, the Bible, or in Christianity it's called the Old Testament, and they specific portion and they step inside the story and like empathize with a character and try to understand how it's relevant today and about it, and some Torah, which is like easy to ask. And the whole process is designed to help kids grow into the next stage of their lives, just being a little kid and stepping into adolescence. And it's super powerful to just witness that process evolve and unfold around like stepping into more free and which is really what I think adolescence is about.
Yeah, more freedom and more responsibility. That's so true. I think that very distilled definition of what you're inviting young people to step into in such an intentional way and such a personalized way, I think is really significant. You're everything you're touching on feels like what we're hearing from young people about sacred experiences. So let me give a few data points that are fresh because we haven't really released them yet. So this is the first time I'm sharing them, but it just shows what is sort of the shape that sacred encounters and sacred experiences are often taking. So in all the young people we surveyed, for those who said, yes, I've had a sacred experience, 73% of young people say that they've had that sacred moment in times of suffering. And about the same percentage, 72%, say they've had one during times of hopefulness, hopefulness about the future specifically. 70% have had one in relationships with family. Which often I know that's what the ceremonies look like. 67% in relationships with friends and 65% in relationships with faith leaders. Mm-hmm. So those are all, important places or emotional states or important people that are part of what makes something sacred, according to the nationally representative surveying we've done with 13 to 25-year-olds. So yeah, I think it's important for us to think about where and how these sacred moments are happening. You've already, told us some about the Be Mitzvah program, and I want to hear more about that still. But since you've alluded to just the range of life cycle events that you facilitate, what other life cycle events might, feel like they connect with these definitions and these places of where young people say, yeah, I've had a sacred encounter?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many. I mean, life cycle process starts at birth of being welcomed into a sacred community. It's like, the village and growth. So we do a lot of baby naming and welcoming ceremony. And then we do a lot of ceremonies around weddings and parenting and finding a blanket and witness together as a married couple. And and then that, which is less relevant for our body of 13 to 25-year-olds, but there's just so many moments where people can to them. Another method of Judaism that is a contribution to Christianity is the idea of taking a day off, a Sabbath, and like the first chapter of the Torah, or the first of creating, doing, making, running around for taking a day off to chill, and everybody needs to chill. And so that to me is such a radical countercultural into our intense, productive society and culture to rest and connect to what's sacred in our lives and experience and enjoy. Those are the deep principles of Shabbat. And for us, it happens every week. So that really connect with themselves and their nature and something larger every week. And I just love Shabbat, the practice for anybody who's open to it. It really for our connection to the planet.
I love that. I love that you're saying, humanity and the planet can be part of these weekly rhythms of rest and joy and connection. You're saying so much good stuff. Some of the audio is slightly cutting out, so I want to make sure everyone's hearing you. If there's any way you can lean your phone slightly different, it might, I don't know, sometimes the speaker.
Better?
Just so we don't miss anything.
Sure.
Yeah, now that might be a little
closer to me.
Okay, that might
Great.
But yes, I'm loving everything I'm hearing from you, and I'm so glad you mentioned just those weekly rituals and rhythms, because there's these pivotal moments like 13 entering young adulthood stages with the Be Mitzvah program you do, but then that's a one-time thing.
Yeah.
It happened, it's done, you did it. But to also look at the ways that just week in, week out, we can be creating spaces for youth and young adults to recenter themselves, to realign and connect with others in the natural world is so beautifully put. So thank you also for highlighting just what Shabbat can contain with all these potential elements of sacred. I want to go back to the Be Mitzvah program, because whenever I have the opportunity to speak with young people who identify as Jewish, especially in our podcast, the Voices of Young People podcast, I've often asked them the question, what's one of the most sacred experiences you've had? That's just an ongoing curiosity we've had at Springtide. And almost every Jewish young person that I've been in conversation with will point to their bar mitzvah or their bat mitzvah, because they just say, I was in the presence of my loved ones. I really like my rabbi and trust them. I'm reading the Torah out loud, and it just felt like one of the most important sacred moments of my life. What do you hear from the families that you're accompanying, particularly the young people that you're accompanying through these processes, especially because they have such a personalization that you've described, where young people are getting to say, hey, I want to do something that is reflective from the Torah, or hey, I want to do something that's really artistic or creative in another medium. What's the feedback you hear? Do young people point to it as something sacred in whatever words or language they might describe it as?
Yeah, I mean, I think teens, like emerging teens, are so blown away that they get to choose what's in their Be Mitzvah ceremony. It's really about expressing autonomy and developing their own relationship with their cultural inheritance and tradition without the baggage of you have to, because a lot of parents that we work with bring their unresolved Jewish anxiety and trauma to the process of like, you're going to Hebrew school because I had to. And they're not, like, parents are unaware of all the possibilities inherent in Jewish culture for what could be. They only know what they experienced, which often lacked meaning or context. And so there's a dual process happening in our Be Mitzvah program. One process is allowing the space for kids to really explore and to fall in love with Judaism on their own terms and become teachers. The other process is for parents to see how Judaism could be a resource spiritually in their family's life, and to create some healing for parents of like, wow, this is so much better than my experience. I wish I had a Be Mitzvah like this.
Sure.
If a parent says that to me, I'm like, yes, we did our job, and like my work is done, because they see that there are so many right ways to be and do Jewish.
I love that. I love that dual learning that's happening, where multi-generations are saying, well, this is a way to create meaning in the world that doesn't have to just be the shoulds and the have-tos. So I think many folks listening to this conversation live or after the fact are going to look at their own faith systems and their own spiritual traditions, and hopefully think about where can we create that space of autonomy and creativity that's really empowering young people to not just follow a routine, but to empower them to really think about what makes it come alive for them, and to offer that, you said, as teachers even to others. It's really profound.
Yeah.
I know that
one thing.
please say more.
Oh my God. I saw Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret last night.
I want to see it so
Oh
bad.
my God, you have to go see it. It's so amazing, and it's so tender about like all the confusion of middle school around belonging and emerging identity. And oh my God, I just cried. And there's a whole interfaith theme throughout the movie, which like I read the book, I don't know, like in the early 80s, because I'm 54. It was like seeing my childhood on the set. And I totally did not get it, that there was a whole interfaith dynamic in this family and in this novel. And so it's a Christian mom who is excommunicated by her parents, and because she married a Jew. And so how that family trauma and ambivalence about religion plays out for their youth, for Margaret, it's just so relevant to everything that you're doing.
I want to watch it even more now. I don't remember this interfaith
I don't either
when I read it in middle school. So now I'm even more curious to reread Judy
Oh
Bloom.
my God, we need to do a panel after you see the movie with like clergy from different traditions talking about interfaith stuff, because it's so relevant to the conversation that we're having about who am I and where do I belong, and am I worthy of belonging? All of those questions are so up for like, you know, middle school kids and teens, and this movie just nails it in the most thoughtful way.
Oh man, I love that you brought that in. I really want to see it. I've heard that Judy Bloom is so happy with how it turned out. And so I know that the cast is saying, if we made her happy, then we're good. But with these other layers to it, with already the questions that are coming through adolescence and thinking about belonging and becoming, these are the questions and things Springtide is always curious about. And that's why I love talking to you, because you're so invested. You have your hands in the same dirt of what is this ground, what is this growth season look like with belonging and with becoming. I'm gonna let you know when I see it. We have to
great. We'll talk
conversation
and then we'll organize something.
I think everything you've described goes along with what we've heard in our qualitative interviews too. So I gave a few data points from our quantitative research, but what we've heard in interviewing young people about the sacred moments they've had, there's 3 main dimensions that we've just heard over and over again about sacred moments. And I think it correlates with what you've already described, that we've heard that sacred moments are extraordinary, meaning that they're set apart from our ordinary lives in special and meaningful ways. The second is that sacred moments are personal, which I think really speaks to what you're doing, and making it feel really tailor-made for young people. And that communicating deep truths can be really specific to how a certain person is experiencing those deep truths. And then the third is that sacred moments are relational, meaning that they're marked by profound feelings of interconnectedness.
Beautiful.
So those 3 dimensions, extraordinary, personal, and relational, I think they speak to the life cycle events you've described, the coming of age ceremonies and moments. But I think they also speak to the rituals that you do with the high holidays. And you've given me a small preview in another conversation we had about the ways you're flipping the script and reimagining the ritual and tradition of shofar blowing. So could you tell us, what are you doing that makes young people invited and centered in the ways you're reimagining this tradition?
So there's a tradition of blowing a shofar, which is a ram's horn, on every morning the month leading up to Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year in the fall. And then hearing a really loud blast. It's called Tekiah Gedola. It's like, you know, if you can hold it for a minute and blast the shofar for a minute, it's real on Yom Kippur. It's seen in our tradition as like, wake up to the present moment and wake up to your life, because it's a gift. And not only that, but get get it together to live your best life by repairing relationships that have been frayed or ruptured over the past year or several years. You know, really be accountable to people in your life so that you can live with peace and accountability and truth and justice and compassion and all the values. So this practice of blowing the shofar every morning during the Jewish or Hebrew month of Elul, which is the month leading to Rosh Hashanah, is an ancient practice. And I don't know if we're going to do this yet. So if my colleagues are on this interview watching, they've heard me talk about this, but we haven't come up with a program to implement it. But my hope, my vision is that we can enlist teens who have graduated from our Open Tent Be Mitzvah program to learn how to blow shofar, and that we record little snippets of video of 30 or 31 kids blowing shofar and then talking about like, what does being Jewish mean to them? And then we send out like drip content. Every day we send out a little video to folks to really hear from the voices of teens blowing the shofar as a wake up and articulating their truth of how important being Jewish is to them. Oh my God, I'm so excited to do this. It's going to be a lot of logistics, but it's going to be so great.
I can't wait. I hope that we can hear about what it actually looks like as you're, you know, imagining this and visioning it out. I hope we can hear this is how it all went down. And yeah. I love that it's not only inviting them to do a tradition that young people aren't typically the ones who are centered in, but also that you're asking them a question for them to answer however it feels, you know, relevant and real to their own experience about how Jewish life resonates with them.
Yep.
So that's really gorgeous. I think the wheels are turning for, you know, not only the product that we're releasing this fall with the State of Religion and Young People 2023, but also this future project that we've announced where we have grant funding to be able to find out what is working to engage young people in faith communities. Well, these sort of new ways of reimagining you and Judaism your way is just really leading in ways that I find really encouraging and inspiring. So thank you. Thank you for what you do. I have just another last question for you as we wrap up. Because you care about young people and you work with so many different ages, when it comes to the ways that you get to accompany and support youth and young adults, what do you love about it? What draws you to work with young people in these stages of life with the 13 to 25-year-old span we've been talking about?
Yeah. That's such a good question. I really loved having deep conversations with college students when I was a university professor. That was the most important thing to me, more so than like, you know, gauging whether students were like acquiring the content of the classes. I just wanted to mentor people and walk alongside with them and just listen to their stories and reflect back what I was hearing and encouraging them to grow and to take risks and become who they're supposed to be in the world. And so that's the most meaningful, satisfying part of my work with young people, is just being a resource and affirming you're awesome exactly the way you are. And I can't just wait to see who you grow into by exploring the world and coming to a deeper sense of yourself. So I just love it. I mean, I'm so happy I became a rabbi because I get to work with so many more people in different walks of life and stages of life, and working with middle school students. When I started doing this work, I was like, oh my God, I have found my work in the world. Like, this is what I was put on the planet to do, is to really work with kids during this confusing transition and just be a resource to them.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. We want to empower and inspire people just like yourself who care about this stage of life.
Yeah.
And the questions that come and the uncertainties that come, and to see it as this profound gift that you get to walk alongside so many different ages, but particularly those teens and young 20s. I did see we got one question. Do you have time for the one question we got that came in the question box?
Yeah, sure.
It says, what is the number one thing that you've wanted Judaism Your Way to be? Which is, I love that. And the second part of that question is, how do you bring in young adults, 20s and 30s?
Oh, that's so great. I have wanted Judaism Your Way to be a home for people who have felt not at home elsewhere. And I've wanted people to feel like, oh, these are my people. This is where I belong. And I've wanted people to feel really seen and loved for who they are in all their different parts. So that's the answer to the first question.
Beautiful.
And how do we work with young people like 20s and 30s? Two ways. Number one, through all of our services that we offer, like Shabbat services and high holiday programs, and also accompanying people who are discerning or who have already discerned that they want to get married. That is like really sacred, tender work to accompany people in planning a ceremony that reflects their spiritual integrity and authenticity. And then partnering with other organizations around town whose mission is primarily 20s and 30s, like One Table, which is a Shabbat dinner organization, and Base Denver, which is an amazing home-based community that's emerging, and to really support the work that they're doing because their mission is more demographically focused than ours. I mean, when we say we're an open tent to anyone seeking Jewish connection, really, it's like cradle to grave, anybody. And we have a particular sweet spot for young people. And there are other organizations where their mission is to serve young people. And so we support their work too.
I love it. I love the collaboration you're doing. Love the open tent philosophy.
Yeah.
Everything we hear from Gen Z about what they're looking for in any sort of organization, whether that's faith-based or not, that they would look to join, has the characteristics that you're being so intentional to make primary, whether it's inclusion, whether it's authenticity, all of those traits. You're doing it. You're really making these faith spaces feel more welcome and like people can find a home. Yeah. Even if that isn't a place that that's not an experience or a place that they've had maybe previously in any sort of faith space. So or spiritual space. So how can people learn more about your work? Because I know there's people who are like, let me follow what they're doing. Where can people find you online?
Oh, JudaismYourWay.org, and we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on like different platforms. And if people are local in Denver or Boulder, just like come to our stuff in person because it's super fun to connect in person as well as online.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everything you offered today. I love talking with you. I hope it's not the last. I hope we pick up the conversation in the months and years to come. Yeah.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. Let's totally do it.
Our head writer, I already saw, commented and said yes to a panel. So
awesome.
Let's pick that back up. Thank you again, Rabbi Karen. Have a great day.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.